Continuing our countdown to the Investec Derby on Racing UK with our Blue Ribbon questions, and the next revolves around Main Sequence and quite how good he might turn out to be. How much, in a sense, from his handicaps, Graham, has he improved, and how much more does he need to find?
They're the key questions, and the answers are that he's improved plenty with each run, and he probably needs to improve £7 or £8 more to have a chance this weekend. But how can you rule that out, given that he's unbeaten? He's now proven at the trip. He doesn't seem to do a great deal more than necessary, but he does seem to have this telling turn of foot, which seems to get him from well off the pace to on the pace and then in front in short order.
Quite like David Lanigan's approach to this horse as well. How can you look a handicap mark like that in the mouth, he said at the start of the season or after at Newmarket. Of course, it was Newmarket that was the starting point for it last autumn when taking a 2-year-old contest, Main Sequence, and this was a glimmer of what he might become.
Well, let's face it, no one watching this would have thought there's the 2012 Investec Derby winner, but at the time it was the performance of a potentially useful horse who still looks a bit raw and gawky. You can see that for every 2 steps forward he's going half a step sideways, but he gets the message later on and he settles it with that strong burst, and he's bang on top, haloed there from a BHA mark of 79. So this is where he ran to somewhere around the high 80s, 90 mark, but he maintained his unbeaten, which started when singularly unfancied at Yarmouth at I think 50 to 1, and here in what's traditionally a useful, good quality handicap for 3-year-olds at Newmarket. Once again, he's produced on the near side. He takes a little while to engage top gear, but he does produce that turn of foot again, and he settles it neatly over 1.25 miles off a mark of 89. So that is 9 furlongs 79, 10 furlongs 89, and this was the performance which earned him a step up in class for the Lingfield Derby trial.
And a step up in trip as well to bang on approaching 1.5 miles. Does he look a sort of natural middle distance horse, and had he looked like that before to you?
Yeah, I think so. He's by Aldebaran, who was a good horse for Henry Cecil, went to Bobby Frankel in California, ended up as one of the top milers in the States, but I think they ran him in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. But I think we can cease worrying about pedigree because he's won a well-run race over 1.5 miles at Lingfield, a Lingfield Derby trial that clocked a much faster time than the Oaks trial, over the same course and distance on the same day, won by Vow. Good finishing splits, considering the early pace had been stronger than the Oaks trial. And once again, there was that thing where you thought, hello, he's in a bit of trouble here. And then the next minute, he was right on the scene and getting the better of a good battle with Shantaram. Now, Shantaram's a maiden, and some people will say he's just beaten a maiden. But the first two were well clear in what looked a pretty good time. And I think Shantaram's a good horse, or a very smart horse. For all that he's a maiden, I think he'll make his mark in pattern races at some point this season. So I like Main Sequence. I think of all the horses I look at in the Derby market, the one who's at somewhat bigger price to my mind than he ought to be is Main Sequence, and I think he has definite each way potential this weekend. It would be a really good story on many levels. Very young trainer seeking to make his mark, ex-assistant to Sir Henry Cecil, his old man David Lanigan. Bob Lanigan used to be general manager at Coolmore, I think, and we've got an angle that probably hasn't been played out too much, Ted Durkin, who has tasted plenty of big race success, but as, how shall we say, gone out of fashion with a couple of big yards in recent times. Well, he's got this mount on an unbeaten horse, and he'll be hungry in more ways than one this weekend.
And didn't he win the Oaks on Light Shift in these very colours back in 2007 as well? What are his qualities, his strengths and his weaknesses, his pros and cons?
Yeah, that's the next question. I won't call it a weakness, but there's a little tendency to just flick the tail when racing gets serious. I think he has quite a strong mind, but his main asset is I think that turn of speed. It's going to be tested way beyond the way it's been tested before in the Derby, but in the Lingfield Derby trial he was right there on the premises in about 6 strides, and if he can find that turn of foot again at the point that matters most, 2 out in the Derby, then I think he'll be right there. I think he has very strong credentials for the first 4.